everybody. Today we're in a bit of a different location. It looks like there's a lamppost coming out of my head, doesn't it?
There is a lamppost coming out of your head.
This is Sabrash. We're in the Museum of Sabrash, and this is the lovely Nicola.
Hello. Hello.
Nicola has agreed to come along and talk to us today about quite an interesting subject. A second marriage, patchwork families. It's very common these days. Marrying a chap who's a widower, as opposed to someone who's just divorced. World of difference. And Nikki's going to share her experiences with us because she's married to the lovely Boyd, he tells really bad jokes.
Terrible jokes.
Yeah, really bad jokes.
I didn't marry him for his sense of humour, let's put it that way.
Bless him.
Well, I did, but twisted. Twisted sense of humour.
Yeah. But, Nikki's going to tell us about this. So she was a divorced lady.
Yes, many, many moons ago in the UK, I divorced, way back 1998.
You don't look old enough.
Oh, thanks. I knew I loved you for a reason, and that's it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So.
And then obviously subsequently moved here, have a son from another previous relationship who's now just turned 18. And I met my now husband in 2017, I think it was.
But
yes.
But Boyd was widowed. Not how many years before had he?
It was 2 years beforehand. His wife sadly passed away. She had ovarian cancer, and it was all very rapid.
Quick, wasn't it? It was terrible.
Yeah, it was very, very rapid from the moment they had the diagnosis until sadly she passed away. So things weren't easy for him at all.
And then you came into his life.
I did, like a little ray of sunshine.
I could say so much.
But we met, and being married to a guy that's a widower, it has its different kind of.
There must be a different dynamic to it.
There is, because when you divorce somebody, they're still around, and you divorce for a reason. You may not like the person you're married to, they might not like you, something may have happened within that relationship. But when you lose somebody, it's the perfectness, if that's such a word. I'm marrying into a dynamic that in one level was a perfect marriage, because they would never have divorced, they would have been together now.
Yeah, sure.
And then that didn't happen, and then I come along. So it's trying to live.
Do you feel like you're living in a shadow or with a bit of a ghost? Did you feel
Originally, I felt like there was three of us. But I didn't. I don't mean that in a bad way. I just feel like, because I was trying to live up to an expectation, but it was mentally myself.
And so I suppose in some ways, when maybe some of Boyd's, Sarah's, maybe some of her imperfections probably were forgotten and only the good was remembered.
Yeah, but I think we're all guilty of doing that in one way or another. I mean, you're guilty of doing it in many.
Oh, you look back on things with rose-tinted glasses, don't you?
You do. We all do that. Obviously, from what I've been told, I've met her mother, and we're very close. I've met her children. We're very close.
So that's the other thing. You're marrying into that, and then you've got this whole other extended family, and because they had children, you can't just stop that relationship.
No, absolutely not. I mean, as far as they're concerned, Boyd is their stepfather. Father is a very big
and their son-in-law, and now you've come along, and it's like you're a new stepmother.
I've married into that. I've married into that dynamic of a family.
Yeah.
As opposed to separate, separate areas. I've married into a perfection of two boys and a mother-in-law, and now my husband.
But you have a good relationship with all of them.
Oh, totally. It was a little bit odd at first, I will be honest, because obviously, again, I'm coming into a marriage of somebody that's passed away, so you do feel quite intimidated in a lot of circumstances. But they made me feel really, really at ease, and I'm very, very close to all three of them. We have a very, very good relationship.
Oh, that's lovely.
My my husband's mother-in-law now looks at me as her daughter-in-law. It kind of, the older you get, the more families evolve, and they get bigger.
Well, I think that expression about patchwork families, because with step families, and in your case, you're almost inheriting a family. It's much more common these days than it used to be.
Yes.
Obviously with divorce, etc. But so we're more used to it. It's not as maybe as difficult. And I suppose we're grown-ups, we're adults, and when you have something like that, a situation, you can see that there were 2 young boys involved in this, the 2 children, and obviously everybody needs to focus on maintaining as much stability and happiness for those 2 little boys as is possible.
Totally. It's they doesn't matter how old your children are. I mean, Daniel and Jack now are in their mid-20s, and they lost their mother at their late teens, early 20s, and that's quite a tough time for somebody that's an adult. So you're an adult by number, but you're not an adult mentally. And I think for kids that age, when they do lose a parent, can be very, very tough on them. And then all of a sudden you have somebody else thrown into the mix. I think for me personally, what helped is because I got a son, and they immediately got on. My son is now 18, and you've got Daniel and Jack's 26 and 23. I think that's how old they are now. And they get on brilliantly together. So it's the whole experience of going into the family and living.
It's an incredibly difficult thing for them all to cope with.
Yeah, it is.
So when did the children get together? Your Simel and those 2 children as well, Daniel and Jack. Were they together? And they've obviously met.
Well, yeah, but ironically, the first time they met was about 2 days before we got married.
Oh.
I met Jack.
So they came to the wedding?
Yes, they did. I met Jack and Daniel a few weeks beforehand at a wedding in the UK. So it was the first time I met them. And we got on brilliantly straight away. And to be honest, they're such wonderful lads.
What a tough thing for those boys to have gone through. I mean, your heart breaks for them.
Yeah.
But it must... I would imagine it's such trauma, losing their mummy at that age. But then they must have gone on, and the way that they've developed, it must have really made them strong people.
Yes, but they do have a lot of support from not only their grandmother, but also from Boyd and now myself. So they do get a lot of support that way, and they have good family ties and good family network in the UK. But I think one of the things, because we live here and they live in the UK, they don't feel like they always feel welcome when they're here. I get really excited and I send them messages. What's your favourite foods? What do you want me to cook?
So they come and stay? Yeah.
They come and stay. I make the beds up for them. I end up being a little bit like a mother hen.
That's lovely.
Which I think, quite frankly, annoys them sometimes.
Yeah, but it's obviously, it's such a tragedy that they've lost their mummy, but thank God that they've got someone who actually cares as well.
Yeah.
It must be a really, really difficult situation for say this to happen where there's some kind of bitterness or animosity or difficulty. I was saying to Nicola earlier that many years ago, and I think it would have been, it is a long time ago, my grandpa's first wife died very sadly of a brain hemorrhage, and the baby was only about a year old. They had a son, David, and my grandpa came home from work to find his wife tragic, dead on the floor, and the baby screaming in the high chair. And because he was in the army and was moved around, stationed in different places, and this was 1936, 37, things were different. You know, being a single dad then would have been incredibly difficult. But my uncle was adopted within the family, and my grandpa went on to meet my grandma and have 3 more children. And I think then it must have been an incredibly different and difficult time, and to try and, you know, have some kind of continuity and some kind of contact. I think my uncle always grew up knowing that, you know, his what he called his mum and dad, well, not actually his mum and dad, but, you know, this other chap was his dad.
Yeah.
And he did spend time with with the family, but it was always different, and it must have been very difficult then for a young boy to grow up like that.
I would think so too, because it's not so much a stigma, but it's a done thing then, wasn't it? You couldn't really be a single father bringing up a child, could you?
No, especially not during the
wasn't-
war. Yeah.
Not during the war, obviously, because of what was going on and then working. But it really wasn't looked upon as a father should bring up a child on their own. It was always, if it was a mother, that was
Yeah.
a different scenario.
Yeah.
But he wasn't really left with a choice.
But no, my 1-year-old uncle was adopted by his uncle and aunt, who didn't have children, and grew up in a very happy, and he was loved and wanted. But yes, there is an abiding difference, isn't there?
Yeah.
Between the 3 children that came from the second marriage, and I think my grandma, obviously, she had to compete, and I think it is a competition. It is there is a competition sort of element to it with the ghost of my grandpa's first wife. It must have been very difficult.
It does have its hurdles that you've got to cross.
Yeah.
Because people may not be comparing you to the wife, to the late wife, but you know, sometimes you are being, and then you feel like you need to up the ante, so to speak, so that people don't go, oh yeah, that's just like she used to do that, oh yeah, that reminds me of her.
Difficult.
You know, which it can actually make things a little bit awkward.
But and as well, for sort of you can't forget the memory of someone, obviously, but what about things like a birthday or an anniversary? How difficult that must be for the surviving partner in his new relationship to deal with.
Yeah.
Oh, that was my wife's birthday. This was my wife's anniversary. This is our wedding. You know.
Yeah.
Blimey, what a minefield.
Can be.
Yeah.
Can
what an
be.
absolute minefield.
Yeah.
So we'd really love to hear from you. If you've been in this situation, or you think you've got any advice to pass on to someone who's possibly experiencing this, it would be great to hear from you, because obviously, you know, the only experience I've got of it is many generations back in our family, nearly 100 years ago. Gosh, it is, isn't it? 90 years ago. And you're doing this now, but for a younger woman now, how would you move into that situation? Be very difficult.
It's the dealing mechanisms you need for it, I think.
So, yes, we'd love to hear from you if you've got anything.
Yeah.
But Nicola, thank you so much for joining us
You're
today.
so thank you so much for having me, even though I've got a really bad cold.
Yeah.
So I'd like to say that my voice, even though it sounds like a dark, husky, sexy voice, it's not. I've got a stinking cold.
Yeah, you keep that to yourself. Thank you. Join us again next time. Lovely to see you all. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye-bye.